The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning, cream-colored cardstock with my mother's elegant handwriting announcing my father's 60th birthday celebration. I stared at it from behind my glass desk on the 47th floor of the Millennium Tower, where Nexus Technologies occupied the entire level. Below me, Boston sprawled in the October morning light, a city where I'd built an $800 million company that my family still called my computer hobby, 12 years old, sitting at our mahogany dining table in Wellesley. "Dad, I want to study computer science when I grow up," I'd announced, proud of the simple program I'd coded that afternoon. My father, Harold Reynolds, set down his wine glass with deliberate precision. "Technology is a bubble. Mackenzie, banking is forever. Look at your grandfather, your great-grandfather. We build lasting institutions, not toys." My older brother Jason, 16 and already Dad's carbon copy, nodded sagely. "Mom says girls aren't good at math anyway." "That's not what Mom started, but Dad's look silenced her. "You'll thank me when you're older," Dad continued. "I'm saving you from disappointment." The memory still stung 22 years later. Harold Reynolds, Senior Vice President at Atlantic Financial Group, had never wavered in his conviction that my path was a mistake waiting to happen. Even as Nexus grew from a dorm room startup to one of Boston's fastest-growing tech companies, even as we landed Fortune 500 clients and industry awards, Dad maintained his stance with the unwavering certainty of a man who'd never been wrong about anything that mattered. Jason had followed the prescribed path flawlessly: Harvard Business School, immediate vice president position at Atlantic Financial, a role that coincidentally opened just as he graduated, marriage to Amanda Whitmore from the right family, and now a corner office 2 floors below Dad's. At 36, he embodied everything our father valued: predictability, prestige, and profit margins that could be calculated in advance. My assistant knocked and entered with my morning coffee. "Your 10 a.m. is here, the Dataflow Industries team." "Thanks, Sarah. Give me 5 minutes." I turned back to the invitation. Black tie optional, Beacon Hill Country Club. Saturday evening, the same venue where they'd celebrated Jason's promotion, his engagement, his wedding, where I'd sat through countless dinners being introduced as Harold's younger daughter, the one with the computer company. My phone buzzed with a text from Stephanie Chen, my business partner and closest friend since MIT. "Please tell me you're not going to that dinner." I'd been asking myself the same question all morning. Stephanie had watched me return from family gatherings for 8 years, each time a little more deflated. She'd seen me work 16-hour days building something meaningful, only to have my father dismiss it as playing entrepreneur in front of his banking colleagues. But this was different. This was his 60th, a milestone. And we were different too. Last month, Forbes had featured Nexus on their Companies to Watch list. TechCrunch called our latest software platform revolutionary. Surely, at some point, success would speak loudly enough that even Harold Reynolds would have to listen. I typed back to Stephanie. "One more chance. If this doesn't work, I'm done trying." Her response was immediate. Famous last words. "But okay. Just don't let them make you feel small again." That was Stephanie, protective, direct, and usually right. We'd built Nexus together from our shared vision of making enterprise software actually usable. While I handled strategy and client relations, she managed our development teams with the precision of a master conductor. The company existed because we'd both been willing to bet everything on an idea that no one else believed in. My intercom buzzed. "Mackenzie, the Dataflow team is ready." I straightened my blazer and grabbed my files. Dataflow Industries was our biggest prospective client, yet a manufacturing conglomerate looking to modernize their entire operational infrastructure. Landing this contract would validate everything we'd built and position us for the next phase of growth. As I walked toward the conference room, I caught my reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. Professional, confident, successful, everything my 12-year-old self had dreamed of becoming. Yet, somehow, The prospect of sitting at my father's birthday table still made my stomach clench with familiar anxiety. This time will be different, I told myself. It has to be. The data flow partnership could change everything, Stephanie said, spreading the preliminary contracts across my desk 3 days before Dad's birthday. But EdgeTech is circling. They've been trying to poach Dataflow's CTO for months. EdgeTech Solutions was our biggest competitor, a well-funded, aggressive company known for acquiring promising startups and dismantling them. Their CEO, Marcus Webb, had made it clear he considered Nexus a threat worth eliminating. "How long do we have?" I asked, reviewing their technical requirements. Dataflow's board meets Monday to make their final decision. It's between us and EdgeTech. Stephanie leaned back in her chair. "Mackenzie, you know I have to ask, what if they need you this weekend? Your dad's party is Saturday night." The question I'd been dreading. "It's one evening. Steph, I'll have my phone. If something urgent comes up, I'll handle it." She raised an eyebrow. "When has anything with your family ever been simple?" Before I could answer, my desk phone rang. Mom's number. "Hi, Mom." "Darling, I was just finalizing the seating arrangements. Your father's partners will all be there, the Blakes, the Mortons, the Adamses. Such an important evening for him." "I'm looking forward to it," I lied smoothly. "Now, there might be a tiny change to the seating. We have more guests than anticipated, so we're using the private dining room plus the small adjacent room. Don't worry, you'll still be at a lovely table." My stomach dropped. "Which room will I be in, Mom?" "The adjacent one, but it's perfectly nice, and you'll have let me see the Henderson's daughter from California. She's in, what do they call it? Social media. You two will have so much in common. Technology table. Even at his birthday dinner. Dad was segregating me from the real business conversations." I gripped the phone tighter. "Mom, I'd prefer to sit with the family." "Oh, sweetheart, that's just not possible with the space constraints. But you understand your father needs to focus on his colleagues tonight. This dinner is very important for his standing at the bank. And my standing doesn't matter." I thought but didn't say. "I understand." "Wonderful, oh. And Mackenzie, try to dress appropriately. Nothing too modern. You know how conservative Dad's friends are." After she hung up, I stared at the phone. Stephanie was watching me with knowing concern. "Let me guess," she said, "relegated to the kids' table. Worse, the women who don't understand real business table. Skip it. I can't. It's his 60th. Stephanie stood up and walked to the window. "Mackenzie, you're the CEO of a company worth $800 million. Last week, the governor of Massachusetts called you personally to discuss our innovation partnership. You employ 400 people across 3 states. Why are you still seeking approval from people who refuse to see your value?" I joined her at the window. Boston stretched out below us, a city where we'd built something from nothing, where our software was improving efficiency for dozens of companies, where young programmers applied to work for us because they wanted to be part of something meaningful. "Because they're my family," I said quietly. "And despite everything, part of me still hopes that someday they'll be proud of what I've built." Stephanie was quiet for a moment. "Okay, but promise me something. If they make you feel invisible again, if they dismiss you or treat you like you don't matter, promise me you'll remember who you actually are." That evening, I had my regular therapy session with Dr. Chen. We'd been working together for 4 years, mainly on family dynamics and the imposter syndrome that occasionally crept in despite my professional success. "What's your ideal outcome for Saturday night?" she asked. "Recognition," I said after thinking. "Not praise, not adoration. Just acknowledgement that what I've built has value. And if that doesn't happen, then I accept that they may never see me clearly, and I stop giving them the power to make me feel inadequate." Dr. Chen nodded. "That's a healthy boundary. How will you maintain it if the old patterns emerge? We practiced responses. If Jason made dismissive comments, I would acknowledge his perspective without defending myself. If Dad minimized my work, I would change the subject rather than seek validation. If I felt the familiar anxiety rising, I would excuse myself and call Stephanie. "Remember," Dr. Chen said as our session ended, "you can't control their behavior, only your response to it." Driving home to my Back Bay townhouse, I felt centered and prepared. I'd set realistic expectations and established clear boundaries. Whatever happened Saturday night, I would handle it professionally and protect my emotional well-being. My phone buzzed with the text from Jason. "Dad's excited you're coming Saturday. Don't do anything to embarrass him in front of his colleagues." And there it is. I thought, the presumption that I was the problem, the potential embarrassment, the one who needed to behave appropriately in grown-up company. I deleted the text without responding and pulled into my driveway. Stephanie was right. I was already letting them make me feel small, and the party hadn't even started yet. Friday morning brought unexpected complications. I was reviewing Dataflow's latest technical specifications when Sarah rushed into my office. "Mackenzie, Marcus Webb from EdgeTech is on line 1, says it's urgent." Marcus Webb never called me directly. We'd crossed paths at industry events, maintaining the polite hostility of competing CEOs, but personal conversations were rare. "Marcus," I answered. "What can I do for you?" "Mackenzie, I'll be direct. We know you're courting Dataflow Industries. Impressive company, but they're looking for a partner with serious resources, the kind of backing that can guarantee long-term stability." I kept my voice neutral. "Dataflow seems capable of evaluating their options thoroughly." "Of course, but I thought you should know we're prepared to make them an offer they'll find very compelling. No hard feelings. You understand. Just business." The line went dead. Marcus Webb didn't make courtesy calls. This was a warning shot. His way of telling me EdgeTech was moving aggressively on Dataflow. I immediately called Tom Morrison, Dataflow's CEO. His assistant said he was in meetings all day, but would try to call back. That afternoon, no return call came. By evening, anxiety was gnawing at me. Stephanie and I met for dinner at our usual spot near the office. "Webb wouldn't have called unless he was confident," she said, poking at her salmon. "He's trying to rattle you before the weekend." "It's working." I pushed my food around my plate. "What if we lose this? Steph Dataflow represents everything we've been building toward. Then we find another way. We always do." She reached across the table. "But Mackenzie, you can't let business stress compound family stress. One crisis at a time. Easy for you to say. Your parents think you're brilliant." Stephanie's parents, both computer science professors, had understood her career choice from day one. They'd celebrated her successes, consoled her through setbacks, and never once suggested she was wasting her education on a phase. "That's exactly my point," Stephanie said. "You know what healthy family support looks like. You know the difference between people who build you up and people who tear you down. Why do you keep going back for more punishment?" I didn't have a good answer. Hope, maybe, stubbornness, the naive belief that enough success could eventually penetrate decades of dismissal. That night, Mom called as I was getting ready for bed. "Darling, I forgot to mention Amanda is announcing the pregnancy at dinner tomorrow. Such wonderful news, you'll be an aunt by summer." Another milestone Jason had reached first. Another conversation at dinner that wouldn't include me. "That's wonderful for them," I said. "And Mackenzie, I know you'll be gracious about the seating arrangement. Your father's colleagues are very important to his career, and he needs their full attention tomorrow night." "I understand, Mom." But I didn't understand. I understood that Dad prioritized his banking relationships over his relationship with his daughter. I understood that Jason's achievements were family celebrations while mine were polite afterthoughts. I understood that even at 60, Harold Reynolds couldn't see past his own narrow definition of success. After hanging up, I sat in my living room looking out at the Charles River. My townhouse was beautiful, a reward for years of hard work, a symbol of independence my younger self could never have imagined. Yet somehow, the prospect of tomorrow night made me feel like that 12-year-old girl again, dismissed and diminished at her own family's table. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Data flow board meeting moved to Sunday morning. Thought you should know. T.M. Tom Morrison, messaging me directly instead of going through official channels. That meant EdgeTech's pressure was real, and Dataflow was feeling it. I forwarded the message to Stephanie with a note. Sunday morning board meeting. This weekend just got complicated. Her response came immediately. Told you so. What's the plan? I stared at the question for a long time before typing back, survive dinner, save the company, in that order. But even as I wrote it, I knew the weekend would force me to choose between those priorities. And for the first time, I wasn't sure which one mattered more. The Beacon Hill Country Club commanded a prime position overlooking Boston Harbor, its ivy-covered brick facade embodying the understated wealth that had governed Massachusetts for generations. As my taxi pulled up to the entrance, I could see other guests arriving, men in expensive suits with their wives in tasteful cocktail dresses, the uniform of Boston's financial elite. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a navy Armani dress that was sophisticated without being flashy, pearl earrings that had belonged to my grandmother, and minimal makeup, everything calculated to blend in with Dad's world while maintaining my own sense of professionalism. The maitre d' recognized my name immediately. Ms. Reynolds, welcome. The Harold Reynolds party is in the Beacon Room. Mr. Reynolds specifically requested that I escort you to your table. As we walked through the main dining room, I spotted my family through the archway to the Beacon Room. Dad sat at the head of a large round table, surrounded by his banking colleagues and their wives. Jason and Amanda flanked him on either side, Jason's hand resting protectively on Amanda's still flat stomach. Mom was radiant in her role as the perfect hostess, ensuring everyone's wine glasses stayed full. The maitre d' led me past their table toward a smaller adjacent room. Your table is just through here, Ms. Reynolds. The adjacent room was barely large enough for 2 round tables, clearly an afterthought space used when the main room reached capacity. At my table sat 3 other women I didn't recognize, all looking slightly uncomfortable with their obvious relegation. Mackenzie, a woman with short blonde hair, stood up. I'm Jennifer Henderson. I think our mothers conspired to seat us together. I'm the social media girl from California. I shook her hand, instantly liking her wry tone. The computer entrepreneur, pleased to meet you. The other 2 women introduced themselves. Rebecca, an art gallery owner from New York, and Diana, a freelance journalist. As we settled into conversation, I realized Mom hadn't just created a technology table, she'd created an unconventional careers table, separating us from the serious business discussions happening in the main room. So, what exactly does Nexus Technologies do? Jennifer asked as our appetizers arrived. I gave my standard elevator pitch, but found myself genuinely engaged as Jennifer asked intelligent follow-up questions. Rebecca had dealt with similar software challenges at her gallery, and Diana was writing an article about women-led tech startups. For 30 minutes, I almost forgot why I was frustrated. These women understood my work, asked thoughtful questions, and treated my company as the significant business it was rather than an interesting hobby. Then Dad appeared in our doorway. Mackenzie, there you are. He smiled broadly for the benefit of my table mates. Ladies, I hope you're taking good care of my daughter. Mr. Reynolds, your daughter has built an impressive company, Jennifer said. $800 million valuation, that's remarkable for someone so young. Dad's smile faltered slightly. Yes, well, Mackenzie has always been ambitious, though of course, Valuation and profit are very different things in the technology sector. The dismissal was subtle but unmistakable. Jennifer looked confused, clearly not understanding why a father wouldn't be bursting with pride over his daughter's success. "The profit margins are actually quite strong," I said calmly. "We've been cash positive for 3 years running." "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Now, I hate to interrupt your conversation, but I wanted to steal Mackenzie for a moment. Some of my colleagues would like to meet her." I followed him back to the main room, where 3 men in their 60s were deep in conversation about the latest banking merger. Dad placed his hand on my shoulder. "Gentlemen, I'd like you to meet my daughter Mackenzie. She runs a little technology company here in Boston." "Harold's told us about your computer work," said Richard Blake, Dad's longtime partner. "Very impressive. What exactly does your company do?" I began explaining our enterprise software platform, but could see their attention wandering. They nodded politely while clearly waiting for the conversation to return to familiar territory. "Fascinating," Richard said when I finished. "Technology moves so quickly these days, hard to know what will still be relevant in 5 years. Banking, on the other hand," added another colleague, "banking is eternal. People always need financial services, whether the economy is up or down." The conversation seamlessly shifted to interest rates and regulatory changes. I stood there for several more minutes, invisible again, before quietly returning to my table. "Everything okay?" Rebecca asked, noticing my expression. "Perfect," I lied, reaching for my wine glass, but as I sat there, listening to Diana describe her latest investigative piece, my phone began buzzing insistently in my clutch. The persistent vibration of my phone cut through the dinner conversation. I glanced at the caller ID, Tom Morrison, Dataflow's CEO. My stomach tightened as I declined the call, but within seconds, he was calling again. "I'm so sorry," I said to my table mates. "I need to step outside for just a moment." In the club's elegant lobby, I answered on the 3rd ring. "Tom, I wasn't expecting to hear from you tonight." "Mackenzie, I need to speak with you urgently. EdgeTech made an extraordinary offer this afternoon. My board is pressuring me to accept, but I wanted to give you the chance to respond before we make any final decisions." My mouth went dry. "What kind of offer?" 15% above our asking price, all cash, with a guarantee to maintain our current workforce for 2 years. They want an answer by Sunday night. It was more aggressive than I'd anticipated. EdgeTech was playing to win, using their superior cash reserves to force a quick decision. "Tom, their offer might be generous financially. But what about your company's vision, your technology platform? EdgeTech has a history of acquiring companies and dismantling their innovation teams." "I know, Mackenzie, that's why I'm calling. Your integration proposal is superior strategically. Your team understands our technology better than anyone, but my investors are asking hard questions about Nexus's capacity to support a partnership of this magnitude." Through the lobby windows, I could see into the beacon room where Dad was holding court, gesturing expansively as his colleagues laughed at some story. Jason sat beside him, the perfect heir apparent, while Amanda glowed with pregnancy hormones and social attention. "What would it take to convince your board?" I asked. "An in-person presentation. Sunday morning, 9 a.m. You'd have 1 hour to make your case before we vote. Sunday morning, 2 days away. I could do this. Tom, we'll be there. Our full executive team, comprehensive integration timeline, and a financial package that will exceed EdgeTech's offer in long-term value." "I hope so, Mackenzie. I really do. But I have to warn you, EdgeTech has been very persuasive. Marcus Webb personally presented to our board yesterday." After hanging up, I stood in the lobby for several minutes, mind racing. This was exactly the kind of high-stakes situation where Nexus thrived. We'd won bigger clients than EdgeTech by being smarter, more agile, and more committed to genuine partnership rather than acquisition dominance. I returned to find my table in the middle of dessert. the conversation having moved to Rebecca's upcoming gallery exhibition. "Sorry about that," I said, sitting down. "Where were we?" "Everything all right?" Jennifer asked with genuine concern. "Just business. Nothing that can't wait until Monday." But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't true. EdgeTech's aggressive timeline meant no rest this weekend. Stephanie and our team would need to work around the clock to prepare for Sunday's presentation. From the main room came the sound of clinking glasses and Dad's voice rising in a toast. Grateful for another year surrounded by colleagues who've become family, and for the continued success of Atlantic Financial. The speech continued for several minutes, praising the achievements of various banking partners, the strength of their recent mergers, the bright future ahead for their industry. Not once did he mention his actual family mom, Jason, or me. We were props in his professional narrative, not people with our own accomplishments worth celebrating. Jason stood up next, raising his glass. "To my father, who taught me that success comes from building lasting relationships and staying committed to time-tested principles. Dad, everything I've achieved is because you showed me the right path." More applause, more glasses clinking. Amanda beamed at her husband, her hand resting on her stomach in that unconscious gesture of early pregnancy. "I love watching families celebrate together," Diana said quietly, following my gaze toward the main room. "There's something beautiful about parents who are genuinely proud of their children's choices." I forced a smile. "Yes, it's lovely." But what I was watching wasn't pride in their children's choices, it was pride in Jason's conformity. His willingness to replicate Dad's vision of success without question. I'd made different choices, built something innovative and valuable, employed hundreds of people, and transformed how companies manage their operations. Yet somehow, in this room, surrounded by these people, my achievements felt insubstantial. My phone buzzed with a text from Stephanie. "How's dinner? Please tell me you're not letting them get in your head." I typed back, "Data flow crisis. Need full team Sunday morning. We'll call you later." Her response was immediate. "On it, we've got this. Focus on getting through tonight." But getting through tonight was harder than anticipated. As we moved toward coffee and final toasts, I watched my family's perfect tableau of success, Dad's professional triumph, Jason's traditional achievements, Mom's social grace, Amanda's glowing femininity, everything neat, predictable, and socially acceptable. Everything I wasn't. "Mackenzie, darling, come with me for just a moment." Mom appeared at my elbow as the coffee service began, her smile bright but her eyes containing that familiar hint of apology. I followed her toward the ladies' room, grateful for a break from watching my father's colleagues congratulate him on raising such a successful son. The ladies' lounge was elegantly appointed with antique mirrors and fresh flowers, empty except for us. Mom began touching up her lipstick with practiced precision. "I hope you understand about the seating arrangement," she said to my reflection. "Your father was very specific about wanting his business associates at the main table. I understand, Mom. I've always understood where I rank in Dad's priorities." She paused, lipstick halfway to her mouth. "That's not fair. Mackenzie, your father loves you very much. Dad loves the idea of me conforming to his expectations. There's a difference." Mom set down her lipstick and turned to face me directly. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" When was the last time Dad asked me a genuine question about my work? When has he ever attended a company event, read an article about Nexus, or shown any interest in what I've built beyond dismissing it as a phase? "He's protecting you," Mom said quietly. "From what?" She was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "From what happened to him?" I stared at her reflection in the mirror. "What do you mean?" Your father. He wasn't always a banker. Mackenzie, before you were born, before Jason, he had his own company, a technology company. Actually, 1985. The words hit me like ice water. What? He was so excited, so passionate about it. Some new kind of computer networking system for businesses. He quit his job at the bank, convinced your grandfather to invest the family savings, took out a second mortgage on the house. I felt dizzy. What happened? The technology wasn't ready. Or maybe the market wasn't ready. I never really understood the details. But after 18 months, they ran out of money. The company folded. We nearly lost the house. Your grandfather... Mom's voice broke slightly. Your grandfather never spoke to your father again. Said he'd brought shame on the family name. The bathroom suddenly felt too small. Everything I thought I knew about my father, about his rigid adherence to traditional careers, about his dismissal of risk-taking, was reshaping itself around this revelation. He went back to banking. Mom continued, worked twice as hard as anyone else to prove he wasn't a failure, rose through the ranks by being the most conservative, most reliable, most predictable executive they had. He built his entire identity around being the opposite of the man who lost everything chasing a dream. Why didn't you ever tell me this? Because he made me promise never to speak of it. He was so ashamed. Mackenzie? He sees his younger self in you, the passion, the risk-taking, the absolute certainty that you can change the world with technology. And it terrifies him. I gripped the marble countertop, processing this information. So when he dismisses my company, he's trying to save you from his mistakes. In his mind, he's the cautionary tale you refuse to hear. The irony was staggering. For years, I'd interpreted Dad's opposition as lack of faith in my abilities. Instead, it was projection of his own trauma, his own fear of failure replaying through my choices. Mom, his company failed in 1985. Technology has changed completely since then. The market, the infrastructure, the possibilities, everything is different now. I know that. You know that. But your father sees patterns, not progress. A knock on the door interrupted us. Mom, are you in there? Jason's voice. Mom quickly checked her reflection and composed herself. Coming, sweetheart. As we returned to the party, my mind was reeling. The man who'd spent my entire life dismissing my career as foolish risk-taking had once been exactly like me, passionate, driven, convinced he could build something revolutionary. The difference was that he'd failed, and that failure had defined every decision he'd made since. No wonder he couldn't celebrate my success. Every achievement reminded him of his own lost dreams, his own humiliation, his own father's disappointment. But understanding his motivations didn't erase the damage. It didn't undo years of feeling unsupported and undervalued. If anything, it made it worse knowing that his dismissal came from fear rather than genuine assessment of my capabilities. Back in the main dining room, the evening was winding down with final toasts and handshakes. Dad's colleagues were praising the excellent dinner and promising to continue their conversation at next week's board meeting. Jason was basking in the attention, regaling the table with stories about Amanda's pregnancy symptoms while she smiled adoringly. I stood at the edge of the room, watching this tableau of success and belonging, armed with new knowledge that somehow made everything worse instead of better. Mackenzie! Dad's voice boomed across the room. Come here, sweetheart. Richard was just asking about your little computer venture. Little computer venture. The phrase hit differently now. Loaded with his own buried shame about technology and failure. But the dismissal still stung. I walked over to where Dad stood with Richard Blake and 2 other banking executives. Their expressions were politely interested, the look adults give when asked to show enthusiasm for a child's school project. Tell them about your software platform, Dad said with forced enthusiasm. I'm sure they'll find it educational. Actually, Richard said, I was wondering about the practical applications. How exactly does enterprise software generate sustainable revenue? It seems like such a volatile industry. The question itself was reasonable, but the tone suggested he'd already dismissed any answer I might give. These were men who measured success in quarterly statements and 30-year mortgages, who considered anything newer than banking fundamentally suspect. Our software helps companies streamline their operations, I began. We've reduced operational costs for our clients by an average of 23%, while improving efficiency metrics across— That sounds very impressive, interrupted another colleague. But what happens when the next technological innovation makes your platform obsolete? In banking, we deal with eternal human needs, security, growth, stability. Technology is just fashion that changes every few years. I felt my composure slipping. These were the same arguments Dad had been making my entire life, the same dismissal wrapped in polite intellectual packaging. With respect, I said, every industry has been transformed by technology, banking included. Your own operations depend on software platforms, digital infrastructure, automated systems. The question isn't whether technology will continue evolving, it's whether businesses will adapt intelligently or get left behind. The temperature in the conversation dropped noticeably. Richard's eyebrows rose at what he clearly considered impertinence from Harold's daughter. Well, he said stiffly, I suppose every generation thinks they're going to revolutionize everything. Mackenzie, Dad said quickly, his tone carrying a warning. I'm sure these gentlemen aren't interested in a technology lecture. The dismissal was automatic, immediate, and public. In front of his colleagues, Dad had just relegated me back to the children's table. The little girl who didn't understand how grown-up conversations worked. Something snapped inside me. Actually, Dad, maybe they should be interested. Maybe you all should be. While you've been dismissing technology as a fad, companies like mine have been building the infrastructure that your banks depend on. The software that processes your transactions, manages your client data, and enables your digital banking services. It's built by people you consider to be playing at careers. The silence was deafening. Every conversation in the room had stopped. All attention focused on our corner where Harold Reynolds' daughter was creating a scene. Mackenzie, Dad said, his voice tight with controlled anger. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. No, let's discuss it here, in front of your colleagues who think sustainable revenue is impossible in technology. Let's talk about how my little computer venture employs 400 people, generates $200 million in annual revenue, and has contracts with Fortune 500 companies across 3 industries. Jason stepped forward, his face flushed with embarrassment. Mac, maybe I should what? Jason. Pretend my company doesn't exist. Apologize for building something successful. Sit quietly while Dad's friends explain why my industry is just fashion. You're being dramatic, Jason said, as usual. I'm being honest. For the first time at one of these dinners, I'm being completely honest about what it feels like to be treated like an embarrassment for refusing to follow your predetermined path. Dad's face had gone pale. Around us, his colleagues were pretending not to listen while obviously absorbing every word. Mom was approaching from across the room, her expression pleading. Mackenzie, sweetheart, Dad said quietly, you're upset. Why don't we— I'm not upset, Dad. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that I still care enough about your approval to keep coming to these events. I'm disappointed that even after 8 years of building something meaningful, you still introduce my company as a little venture. I'm disappointed that I've spent my entire adult life trying to prove my worth to people who decided long ago that my path was invalid. The words hung in the air like smoke. Several guests were openly staring now. Their polite dinner party transformed into family drama theater. Richard Blake cleared his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps we should let you folks sort this out privately. No need, I said, grabbing my purse from the nearby table. I was just leaving. As I walked towards the exit, I heard Mom calling my name, heard Jason muttering apologies to Dad's colleagues, heard the uncomfortable shuffle of people trying to pretend they hadn't witnessed Harold Reynolds' daughter humiliating herself and her family in public. I didn't look back. The cool October air hit my face as I stepped outside the club, my hands shaking with adrenaline and mortification. What had I done? In 2 minutes, I'd destroyed any remaining relationship with my father and embarrassed him in front of his most important professional colleagues. My phone was buzzing insistently. Stephanie, probably responding to some sixth sense that something had gone wrong. But before I could answer, I heard footsteps behind me. Mackenzie, wait. Dad's voice, urgent and strained. I turned to see him hurrying down the club's front steps, his formal demeanor replaced by something I'd never seen before: genuine distress. Dad, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. No, He held up his hand. Don't apologize. We need to talk. A taxi was pulling up to the curb, but Dad waved it away. Walk with me. We walked in silence for several minutes, away from the club and along the quiet Back Bay streets. The evening was unseasonably warm, and despite the formal setting we'd just left, I felt like I could breathe again. Your mother told you, Dad said finally. It wasn't a question. About your company, yes. He stopped walking and leaned against a wrought iron fence surrounding a small neighborhood park. I never wanted you to know about that. Why not? Because I failed. Mackenzie. Spectacularly. I lost everything: our savings, the house equity, my father's investment, my reputation. I went from being Harold Reynolds, promising young executive, to Harold Reynolds, the fool who thought he could revolutionize business technology. I joined him at the fence, studying his profile in the streetlight. Dad, that was 35 years ago. Technology was completely different then. The technology was different. The risks weren't. He turned to face me. Do you know what it feels like to have your father, your own father, tell you that you've disgraced the family name, to have him refuse to speak to you for the last 10 years of his life? The pain in his voice was raw, unguarded. For the first time, I was seeing Harold Reynolds not as the successful banking executive or disapproving father, but as a man still carrying the wounds of his own crushed dreams. I rebuilt my life by never taking another risk, he continued. Every decision measured, every choice conservative, every move calculated to prevent another failure. It worked. I became successful, respected, financially secure. But when I watch you making the same choices I made, trusting the same instincts that destroyed me, I terrify you. You terrify me, he admitted. Because you're brilliant and passionate and absolutely convinced you can change the world, exactly like I was. And if you fail, like I did, you think it will destroy me like it destroyed you? He nodded. I've spent your entire life trying to save you from my mistakes. We stood there in the silence, two people finally understanding each other across decades of miscommunication. I could see it all now: the rigid conservatism, the dismissal of risk-taking, the insistence on traditional career paths. It wasn't about controlling me. It was about protecting me from his own trauma. Dad, I said gently, I'm not you. And 2023 isn't 1985. The technology infrastructure, the market conditions, the support systems for entrepreneurs, everything is different now. But what if it's not? What if I'm watching my daughter set herself up for the same fall that nearly destroyed me? My phone buzzed again, more insistently this time. I glanced at it: 3 missed calls from Tom Morrison, 2 from Stephanie, and a text marked urgent. I need to take this, I said apologetically, answering Stephanie's call. Mackenzie, thank God, Tom Morrison has been trying to reach you. EdgeTech pushed up their timeline. Dataflow's board is meeting tomorrow morning at 8. Not Sunday. We need to be there with our presentation, or we lose the contract. My stomach dropped. Tomorrow morning, Saturday morning. I know it's your dad's birthday weekend, but Mackenzie, this is everything we've worked for. If EdgeTech gets data flow, they'll use it as a springboard to dominate the entire market. We'll be frozen out of major contracts for years. I looked at Dad, who was watching my side of the conversation with growing understanding. I'll be there, I told Stephanie. Get the team together. Full presentation ready by 7 a.m. After hanging up, I turned to Dad. The business crisis I mentioned earlier just became a full emergency. I have to go. The data flow contract. I was surprised he knew the name. You know about data flow. Mackenzie, I may not understand technology, but I understand business. I've been following your company more closely than you realize. He paused. Tom Morrison is a good man. If you land that contract, it validates everything you've built. If I don't land it, EdgeTech could drive us out of the market entirely. Dad was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Then he did something that shocked me. He pulled out his phone and began typing. What are you doing? Calling you a car. You need to get to your office. Dad, I can get my own Mackenzie. He looked at me directly. Go save your company. That's what I should have told you to do 35 years ago when I was in your position. Go save your company. And don't let fear make the decision for you. A black sedan pulled up within minutes. As I got in, Dad leaned down to the window. I'm proud of you, he said. I should have said that years ago, but I'm saying it now. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm proud of what you've built. As the car pulled away, I saw him standing on the sidewalk, a 60-year-old man finally confronting the fears that had shaped his entire adult life. The Nexus offices buzzed with urgent energy despite the late hour. Stephanie had assembled our core team, 12 people who'd answered emergency calls on a Friday night without hesitation. As I walked through our conference room, I saw pizza boxes, coffee carafes, and the determined expressions of people who believed in what we'd built together. Status report, I said, dropping my formal dinner attire for jeans and a Nexus hoodie I kept in my office. EdgeTech's presentation is at 8, said Tom Chen, our chief technology officer. Ours is at 9:30. They'll have first mover advantage and 90 minutes to set expectations. What's their angle? Stephanie pulled up market research on the main screen. Cash, speed, and consolidation. They're promising data flow immediate acquisition at a premium price, with full integration into EdgeTech's existing client base. And our angle, partnership, innovation, and genuine technological synergy. We're not acquiring data flow. We're joining forces to build something neither company could create alone. It was exactly the right approach. But would it be enough EdgeTech had superior financial resources and a track record of successful acquisitions? We had superior technology and better integration plans. But those advantages meant nothing if Dataflow's board prioritized immediate financial returns over long-term strategic value. What do we know about the board composition? I asked. Our business development director, Rachel, had done her homework. 5 members, 2 are venture capital partners focused on ROI. 2 are tech industry veterans who understand innovation cycles. 1 is Tom Morrison himself, who gets the strategic benefits, but answers to his investors. So we need 3 votes. Tom's already with us if we can convince the board our partnership delivers better results than EdgeTech's acquisition. That's a big if, said Rachel. EdgeTech's cash offer is 15% above market value. That's hard to argue against. I walked to the whiteboard and began mapping out our presentation strategy. We're not arguing against their offer. We're showing why partnership with Nexus delivers value that acquisition can't match. For the next 4 hours, we refined our approach. Instead of focusing purely on financial terms, we demonstrate how Dataflow's technology could be enhanced and expanded through integration with Nexus's platform. Rather than being absorbed into EdgeTech's corporate structure, Dataflow would remain independent while gaining access to our client base, development resources, and market reach. At 3 a.m., Stephanie found me in my office reviewing the final presentation slides. "You should get some sleep," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Can't. Too much writing on this. Mackenzie, we've done everything we can. The presentation is solid, the technical integration is flawless, and our financial package is competitive. If we lose this, it won't be because we weren't prepared. If we lose this, EdgeTech becomes the dominant player in our market. Everything we've built becomes a footnote in their growth story." Stephanie was quiet for a moment. "Is that what this is really about? Or is it about proving something to your family?" The question hit harder than I expected. "What do you mean? You've been carrying the weight of their disapproval for 8 years. Tonight, for the first time, your dad acknowledged what you've built, but you're still acting like you have something to prove." I stared at the presentation slides on my laptop screen, charts and graphs and technical specifications that represented 8 years of work, hundreds of employees, millions in revenue. Maybe I do have something to prove. To who your dad finally gets it. Your company is successful by any reasonable measure. What more validation do you need? I need to win this. I said simply, not for validation, but because losing isn't an option. Too many people depend on us, our employees, our clients, the startups that look to us as proof that innovation can compete with corporate consolidation. Stephanie smiled. There's the CEO I know, not the daughter seeking approval, but the leader who refuses to let her people down. At 6 a.m., our entire team gathered for final preparation. We ran through the presentation twice, anticipating questions and rehearsing technical demonstrations. By 7:30, we were as ready as possible. As we loaded into cars for the drive to Dataflow's offices, my phone buzzed with an unexpected text from Mom. "Your father couldn't sleep. He's been reading articles about Nexus all night. He says to tell you that he finally understands what you've built, and he believes you're going to win today." I showed the message to Stephanie, who grinned. "Well, that's new." "Yeah," I said, looking out at the Boston skyline as our car crossed the river. "It really is." But even with my family's newfound support, everything still came down to the next 90 minutes. We'd built something remarkable, but now we had to prove it could survive in a market where bigger didn't always mean better, where innovation sometimes mattered more than acquisition, where a company founded by 2 MIT graduates could outmaneuver a corporate giant. The car pulled up to Dataflow's sleek office building. Through the lobby windows, I could see the EdgeTech team arriving in their black sedans, Marcus Webb leading a group of executives in expensive suits. "Ready?" Stephanie asked. I took a deep breath, thinking about everything that had led to this moment, the years of building, the family conflicts, the late nights and early mornings, the belief that technology could make business better and more efficient. "Ready," I said. The Dataflow boardroom felt like a courtroom as we set up our presentation materials. EdgeTech had finished their pitch 30 minutes ago, leaving behind an air of confident professionalism and a formal offer packet on the conference table. Marcus Webb's team had been polished, prepared, and persuasive, everything I'd expected from a company with EdgeTech's resources. Tom Morrison looked tense as he introduced our team to the board. The 5 members sat arranged along one side of the table, Sarah Chin and David Walsh from venture capital firms. Dr. Elena Rodriguez and James Park, with deep tech industry experience, and Tom himself as CEO and final decision maker. Nexus Technologies, I began, isn't here to acquire Dataflow. We're here to propose a partnership that will transform both our companies and deliver innovation that neither could achieve alone. I clicked to our first slide, not financial projections, but a technical diagram showing how Dataflow's data analytics platform could integrate seamlessly with Nexus's enterprise management system. EdgeTech has offered you an acquisition that will make Dataflow a subsidiary of their existing operations. What we're offering is true technological synergy. For the next hour, we demonstrated how the partnership would work. Tom Chen walked through the technical integration, showing how Dataflow's algorithms could enhance our software platform while our infrastructure could dramatically expand Dataflow's capabilities. Rachel presented market analysis, proving that combined companies could compete for contracts worth billions in untapped markets. But what about the financial terms? Asked Sarah Chen from the venture capital side. EdgeTech's offer is immediate, substantial, and guaranteed. I had anticipated this question. Our offer matches EdgeTech's total value, but structured differently. Instead of a buyout, we're proposing a merger of equals. Dataflow maintains its independence while gaining equity in Nexus's growth. What does that mean practically? David Walsh wanted specifics. Stephanie stepped forward with our final slide. It means Dataflow's shareholders receive immediate cash payment of $12 million plus equity stakes in the combined entity. Based on our projected growth, that equity will be worth more than EdgeTech's flat buyout within 18 months. Dr. Rodriguez, the tech industry veteran, leaned forward. You're asking us to bet on future growth rather than taking guaranteed money. We're asking you to bet on innovation rather than consolidation. I replied. EdgeTech will absorb Dataflow's technology into their existing systems. Within 2 years, your innovations will be indistinguishable from their standard offerings. With Nexus, Dataflow becomes the foundation for next-generation enterprise solutions. Tom Morrison had been quiet throughout our presentation, but now he spoke. The technical integration is impressive. The market opportunity is real, but my board has fiduciary responsibility to our investors. James Park nodded. EdgeTech's offer eliminates risk. Your proposal creates new risks, even with potentially higher rewards. Must yet. This was the moment I'd been preparing for the fundamental choice between safety and innovation, between guaranteed returns and transformational possibilities. You're absolutely right, I said. Partnership with Nexus does involve risk, but so did starting Dataflow in the first place. So did every innovation that brought you to this moment. The question isn't whether there's risk. The question is whether the potential rewards justify that risk. I walked to the whiteboard and drew a simple diagram. EdgeTech's acquisition eliminates Dataflow as an independent entity. Your technology becomes theirs. Your team becomes their employees. Your vision becomes subordinate to their corporate strategy. It's safe, predictable, and final. I drew a second diagram. Partnership with Nexus preserves Dataflow's independence while amplifying your capabilities. Your technology remains yours, enhanced by our platform. Your team remains intact, supported by our resources. Your vision becomes the foundation for both companies' futures. The room was silent as the board processed this choice. After several minutes, Sarah Chen spoke. We need to discuss this privately. Our team waited in Dataflow's lobby while the board deliberated. Through the conference room's glass walls, we could see intense discussion gestures, documents being passed around, what looked like heated debate between the venture capital partners and tech industry veterans. After 45 minutes, Tom Morrison emerged. We've reached a decision, he said simply. We'd like to move forward with the Nexus partnership. The relief was overwhelming. Stephanie grabbed my arm. Tom Chen actually whooped, and Rachel was already pulling out her phone to call our legal team. We'd done it, outmaneuvered EdgeTech, secured the partnership, and positioned both companies for the next phase of growth. But as we shook hands and began discussing implementation timelines, I realized something profound had shifted. This victory wasn't just about beating a competitor or proving Nexus's value. It was about choosing innovation over safety, partnership over acquisition, and long-term vision over short-term guarantees, all the qualities my father had once feared in me. Monday morning brought a media blitz that surprised everyone. Word of the Dataflow partnership had leaked over the weekend, and tech industry publications were calling it a David versus Goliath victory, and proof that innovation still beats consolidation. TechCrunch's headline read, "How Nexus Technologies Outmaneuvered EdgeTech for Industry's Biggest Partnership." I was reviewing interview requests with Sarah when she buzzed my office intercom. "Mackenzie, your father is here. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's important." Dad, at my office on a Monday morning. In 8 years, he'd never once visited Nexus's headquarters. "Send him in." He entered hesitantly, looking around the corner office with its floor-to-ceiling windows and view of Boston Harbor. He was carrying a manila folder and seemed nervous in a way I'd never seen before. "Impressive," he said, gesturing toward the windows. "Very impressive." "Thank you. What brings you here?" "Dad." Instead of answering, he opened the manila folder and removed a yellowed newspaper clipping. "I thought you should see this." The headline read, "Local Tech Startup Folds After 18 Months." Below it was a photo of a much younger Harold Reynolds standing in front of an empty office building, looking devastated. "Reynolds Computing Solutions," I read aloud. "Founded 1985, specialized in networked business systems." "I never threw it away," Dad said quietly. "Kept it in my desk drawer for 38 years as a reminder of what happens when you confuse passion with business sense." I studied the article more carefully. The description of Reynolds Computing's technology sounded remarkably advanced for 1985 networked systems that could share data between different departments, automated reporting tools, integrated communication platforms. "Dad, this technology. You were building the internet for businesses before most people knew what the internet was." "I was building something the market wasn't ready for," he corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there? Or were you just 20 years ahead of your time?" He sat down across from my desk, looking older than his 60 years. "I've been reading about Nexus since Friday night. Really reading, not just dismissing. Your enterprise platform, the data flow partnership, the technology integration you're planning. It's everything I tried to build in 1985, but better, smarter, more sophisticated." I handed the clipping back to him. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying I was wrong. About your company. About your choices. About the risks you've taken." He paused, gathering courage. "I'm saying I've spent your entire adult life trying to protect you from my failure instead of learning from it, Dad." "Let me finish." His voice was stronger now. "Your mother made me watch the TechCrunch interview you did yesterday. The reporter asked how you knew to bet everything on the Dataflow partnership when EdgeTech seemed like the safer choice for them." I remembered the question. It had been a good one. "You said that innovation requires believing in possibilities that others can't see yet. That successful entrepreneurs don't avoid risk, they understand it, prepare for it, and take calculated chances on revolutionary ideas." He smiled sadly. "Those were almost the exact words I used to describe Reynolds Computing to investors in 1985. "The difference is that you were right," I said. "Your technology was revolutionary. The market just wasn't ready. And you made sure the market was ready before you revolutionized it. That's what I never understood. You're not reckless like I was. You're brilliant." The admission hung between us. Decades of miscommunication and missed opportunities contained in those few words. "I want to understand what you've built," he continued. "Really understand it. Not just acknowledge it. I want to learn about your company, meet your team, see why 400 people chose to follow your vision." "You're welcome here any time," I said. "But Dad, I need you to know I don't need your approval anymore. I would love your support, but I don't need your validation to know my worth." He nodded. "I know. That's what makes me most proud of you. You built something extraordinary without waiting for anyone's permission, including mine." 3 months later, I stood in my townhouse dining room watching Dad discuss data encryption with Tom Chen while Mom and Stephanie compared work-life balance strategies. This was our third monthly dinner, a new tradition where my biological and chosen families could finally meet as equals. "Mackenzie," Amanda called from the kitchen. "Tom Morrison says the data flow integration is ahead of schedule." I smiled, watching Dad listen intently as Tom explained blockchain technology's banking applications. The man who'd once dismissed my computer hobby was now genuinely curious about innovation. "Actually," I said, "I've been invited to speak at the Banking Association's conference next month. Want to introduce me, Dad?" His face lit up. I would be honored. Later, as guests left, Dad lingered on my front steps. "This is different from how I grew up," he said, gesturing toward the warmth inside. "We never talked about loving your work or making a difference. Success was just titles and paychecks." "I understand why you were scared," I said. "Watching me take risks after what happened to you in 1985. But you succeeded by being authentically yourself, not by conforming to my expectations." He paused. "I'm proud of that." As his car pulled away, I felt genuine peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because we'd started being honest about who we really were. My phone buzzed with a text from Stephanie. "Your dad asking about startup investments was hilarious." I laughed, typing back, "He says he wants to finish what he started in 1985. Looking back at my townhouse, I could see framed photos I'd added recently: team celebrations, industry awards, candid dinner shots where both my families were finally, authentically together. I finally understood the table I'd been seeking a place at for so many years had been the wrong table entirely. The real celebration wasn't where others thought I belonged, but where I chose to build something meaningful, surrounded by people who saw me clearly. It had taken 34 years, but I learned the most important lesson. Validation doesn't come from others. It comes from building something you're proud of, with people you trust, in service of a vision that matters. Everything else is just seating arrangements.